Welcome back to Robert's Kitchen, and this is another video to show you how to roast chickens. So here tonight we have two young chickens. These are no more than 3.5 pounds. The younger the chicken, the more tender it is. And I get these from the butcher. And what we're going to do is we're going to season our chicken. First we washed it in a salt bath. We washed the inside and the outside. We patted them dry. And we're going to use some spices as a rub. We have marjoram, thyme, onion powder, garlic powder, oregano, and paprika. And there is about a teaspoon of each in here. There's also 2 tablespoons of salt, coarse sea salt, and about another teaspoon of black freshly ground pepper. And it's just all mixed in. And what we're going to do is we're going to take some in our hands and we're going to rub the cavity of the chicken inside. Be very, very careful when you do this because sometimes there's bones protruding and you don't want to get your fingers stuck on a bone. And just going to rub the inside nicely on each chicken. A little bit more. And what this does is as the chicken is cooking, it flavors the meat. And I'm going to reserve that for when I'm finished. Now what I do is I use an injector and I inject the chicken with butter and honey mixture. I melted a half a cup of butter and about 2 tablespoons of honey. You can use any kind of honey. And I melted it. And I'm just going to mix it up. So we put our honey mixture in a little smaller cup and we're going to get it into the injector. And we're just going to inject the breast meat, the legs, that. And what we're going to do is going to reserve the rest of the butter and honey, and we're just going to pour some on top. Like this, make it all nice. Just rub it on the top of the skin. You want to get a nice amount in there. And then we're going to take some and we're going to rub some in each chicken cavity. Okay. And then we're going to take the remainder of our spices. We're just going to sprinkle them on top of each chicken. And we injected them all. We put our butter on the top of the skin. We rubbed it nicely. We put our seasoning on. We're going to put it into the convection oven at 400 degrees for about 20 minutes a pound. So they're 3 pounds each. So this should not take very long. And I will show you how to test it when it's finished. When you put it into your oven, if you have a wall oven or regular gas oven, you don't have to do this in a convection. You could do it in a regular gas oven. You could put it in a little bit lower temperature. You could put it in at 375. I always put it in the middle rack. This way the air flows around it. And we're just going to close it and set the timer. We're going to set the timer for about an hour. And we're going to test it after about an hour just to see where it is and how far along it's gotten. And we'll be back. Okay, so as our chickens are roasting in the oven, we're going to make a very simple side dish of pasta. We're going gluten-free tonight. So what I've done already is I've cut up a package of baby bella mushrooms. I've cut up a half of an onion and I've minced 2 cloves of garlic. So in my saucepan, I'm going to put about 2 tablespoons of butter and about maybe a tablespoon of olive oil. I'm going to bring it to the stove, and we're going to melt the butter. Get the olive oil nice and hot first. We want to do this on a low flame. You don't want to cook on high flames. High flames burn everything. Cook on a low flame. It releases the flavor of the food more, and it's safer. All right, so our butter is mostly melted. Our oil is nice and hot. I'm going to give it a little turn of freshly ground black pepper. And we're going to put that in there nice. And we're going to put our garlic in. And put our onions. And we're going to put our mushrooms. All right, we're going to put on top of that, I'm going to put a little coarse sea salt, maybe about a teaspoon. And we're going to give that a nice stir. Just get all those ingredients mixed up in there. So as this is cooking, I'm going to add a little bit of heat to it. I'm going to add about 1/8 of a teaspoon of cayenne pepper. Just gives it a little bit of interesting flavor there. And once our mushrooms and our onions and our garlic have cooked down, they're all sauteed, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in some sherry wine, and I'm going to add some dairy-free almond milk. I'm going to make this a mushroom cream sauce. Okay, so our mushrooms are cooked down, and we're going to add a 1/2 cup of cooking sherry. Actually, it's not cooking sherry, it's regular sweet sherry. And I'm just going to give that a nice stir. We want the alcohol to cook off of that, so what we're going to do is raise the heat a little bit. And what you should not be afraid to do, don't be afraid to flavor your foods. Most people are afraid to put seasonings in. Oh, I don't want too much salt, I don't want too much pepper. If you don't season the food, it's bland, it's dull. It has no flavor at all. It becomes a very boring meal. So when our our sherry has reduced and the alcohol is burned off, we're going to add just a little bit of gluten-free flour to this to thicken it up, and then I'm going to add the almond milk. And it is regular almond milk sweetened, because the unsweetened has actually like a cardboardy taste, and it does not taste good. The regular almond milk tastes like real milk, and you'll never know the difference when you're making a nice cream sauce for your macaroni. You won't know the difference. All right, so our alcohol has cooked off. Our liquid is a little bit reduced. So we're going to add about a tablespoon of our gluten-free flour. And we're going to mix that in and see how thick that becomes. Lower the heat a little bit. I'm going to mix a little bit more in. This is making more or less like a roux. Okay, so now we're going to add our almond milk. Alright, so we're adding our almond milk, and we're going to add about a cup to start with. And I'm just going to stir that all up and make sure everything is nice and evenly distributed. And we're going to let that start to bubble. Once it starts to bubble, then I know how thick it is and if I want to add more or not. And at this point, what I'd like to do is I'm going to add some more salt maybe about a quarter of a teaspoon, and a little bit more black pepper. Alrighty, so our milk is starting to bubble, our mixture here is starting to bubble, and it's a little bit thick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add about maybe another half a cup of the almond milk. And I just want to, as I'm adding it, I'm going to stir it in. And we'll let that come back to a boil and see how thick we are after it comes back to a boil. Cooking in the back of the stove is, I'm steaming some fresh broccoli. And it's a steamer on top with a regular pot on the bottom. And you want to get it so that your stems are soft but not too soft. And we're just going to cover that up and let the steam do its work. And what we're going to do is after we steam it, we're going to saute it with a little garlic and olive oil. All right, so our broccoli is done. We steamed it. The stems are nice and soft, and we're going to take our steamer off and put it over there. Shut the flame off, would always help. And just empty our water. Back on the stove. I'm going to fill that with a little bit of olive oil. Not too much, maybe about 2 tablespoons full. Get the olive oil hot, and we're going to cut some garlic in there. Alright, so I'm just going to cut some fresh garlic in there. And we're going to add a little bit of black pepper. And some sea salt. A little in there. Then we're going to take our broccoli. Dump it in. Turn off the flame, and that's it for our steamed broccoli. Put that in a dish and keep it warm until we're ready to eat. Alright, so our macaroni has cooked, and I used again the gluten-free jovial pasta. This time it was penne. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of our pasta water, and we're going to pour it into our cream sauce here and stir it up. This takes the saltiness of the pasta water, it marries the two together, as we say. Alright, I'm going to turn off our macaroni, and we're going to take it over to the sink and strain it. So before we take our chickens out, we're going to insert the meat thermometer, and you want to insert it between the leg and the breast. That's your point of entry there, so that you want a temperature of about 175, 180. Please always make sure that your chicken is always cooked well. And we are just about at 170. I'm just going to let it go for another 5 minutes. So we got another 5 minutes left. Our chicken total time cooking has been about 1 hour and 25 minutes at 400 degrees. I'm going to take them out, and we're going to let them sit for 5 minutes. All right, we're going to lift them out gently. Let all the juice drain out of the inside. And we're just going to put them on the cutting board, and we're just going to let them sit there and rest for 5 minutes. I'm just going to cover them very lightly with aluminum foil. And they will continue to cook, so you have to be aware of that. So when you take them out of the oven, you want to take them out maybe 5 degrees lower than what you are supposed to. These, I think breast meat's supposed to be 180 degrees, 175. I took it out. It was just above 170 when I took them out. So we're just going to let them sit there for 5 minutes. We're going to carve them up, and we'll show you the whole dinner. Our chickens are resting there. What we're going to do is we're going to take this pan of drippings and we're going to strain them into a pot. And we're going to put it back on the stove. Turn the flame on low. And we're going to let that boil. Once it starts to boil, we're going to put a mixture of flour and water in there to thicken it up. And we'll end up with a nice thick gravy from the chicken drippings. All right. Our dripping liquid is boiling. We're going to add a little bit of flour and water mixed together. And it's a nice liquid consistency. If it's too thick, you're going to end up with lumps. So we're just going to take our whisk and we're going to start whisking. And you want to add it gradually. You do not want to add it all at once. Sometimes when you add it all at once, what happens is it will boil up and over. And that will be a catastrophe for your stove or whoever has to clean your stove. And also you don't want to add it too fast because you want to get the right consistency. Some people like it a little thicker than others. Right? You know, my family like it a little thinner. So that's what we're aiming for. And I'm just going to add just a little bit more. This was about a tablespoon, maybe 2 tablespoons of the gluten-free flour, and perhaps a teaspoon, 2 teaspoons of water. If that water wasn't enough, then I just added more until I got a liquid consistency that wasn't too thick, because if you pour too thick of a mixture in here, it's going to lump up and become almost like dumplings, and you'll never get the lumps out. So we're just going to cook that down. And if you're using regular flour needs to, I always like it to have it cook for at least a minute, because what happens is you get a very floury taste if it doesn't cook and incorporate well into the gravy. I think we're good. I'm going to turn off the flame. And I'm just going to let that sit. And then we're going to go and carve our chicken. Okay, so here it is. Our roasted chicken, steamed broccoli with garlic and oil, and our gluten-free macaroni with cream sauce, a little bit of basil, mushrooms, onions, garlic, and our chicken gravy. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video, and come back soon and watch for more videos. We have lots more in the works. Buonasera. Ciao.